what are you looking to do with property taxes?
Well, we're looking to give people relief from the high cost of living. I mean, we've had a major inflationary period in American history, one of the most inflationary. Groceries, all these things. Who knows what's going to happen with oil? The one thing we control is tax. And so in Florida, local governments get property tax. We don't get it at the state. We've got a plush rainy day fund. We've paid down half our debt since I've been governor. I've got all this great stuff. We're doing great. Local governments, when I became governor, were taking in $32 billion. Now they're taking in $60 billion. So the revenue's almost doubled in 7 years. Why? Because they're assessing the values higher, and the values have gone up. And so we're saying, okay, if you're a Florida resident and you're homesteading your property, that's your primary homesteaded residence, we think that should be excluded. Now that's about 30% of the overall property tax revenue if you just did it on day one. So it's got to go on the ballot in November of 2026. And it'll be something that would be phased in most likely, but we could get to a point very quickly in Florida where 90-some% are not paying anything, and eventually we'd phase in the elimination. So it can be done, and if we don't do anything, they're going to have $84 billion in revenue in 2031. So that's 12, 13 years to go from 32 to 84. So when people will say, you can't do it, you're not going to have any services, just ask them, did we not have schools and police in 2019 when they were taking in $32 billion? Of course we did. Now, give them inflation, give them population growth, give them a couple percent just for kicks on a Saturday night. That takes you to about 46 or 47 billion. It doesn't take you to 60. So how would you want to do that? Maintain the growth of these governments or give Floridians really historic property tax relief?
How do you view the balance between federal and state government?
Well, I'm a constitutionalist, and so James Madison in Federalist 45 said the powers delegated under the proposed Constitution, because remember, he was arguing for the Constitution to be adopted, are few and defined. Those belonging to the states are numerous and indefinite. And we've gotten away from that as a country because the federal government has grown over many, many years, both in terms of the scope of its power and also the size of its spending prowess that it uses in various ways to reduce the autonomy of states. But on day-to-day issues, when we had the hurricane in 2022 and the hurricanes in 24, FEMA was not on the front lines. We were on the front lines. The local emergency responders were on the front. We are the first line of defense. When people are committing criminal offenses and they need to be prosecuted, taken off the street, that's a local sheriff or police department that's handling that. Things like education, all the things that affect you the most in your daily life are at the state level. Now, the federal government's tried to intrude on that over the years, but we have a huge responsibility to maintain. And that's why I think, because of the federalist structure, that's why I think you've had so much differential in population migration, in wealth migration, because you really do have laboratories of democracies, right? You have the ability to elect people to be able to adopt policies that are going to be very meaningful for your quality of life. And I think people have voted with their feet very resoundingly over my tenure as governor in Florida. And it's not just Florida, but we've obviously been the focal point.
How does what's going on with AI and this AI Bill of Rights play into what we were just talking about?
Well, I think so. If you look at the Founding Fathers, what they did with the Declaration and then the Constitution, if you look at the underlying philosophy, there's nothing new under the sun. It's as relevant today as it was then. Yeah, they had horse and buggy. We have chatbots. Yeah, they had wrote with a quill pen. We have all this technology. But what they were doing, they were diagnosing human nature. They understood there were flaws in human nature. They understand because of those flaws, when power is concentrated, it's apt to be abused. And so they built this architecture to make sure that you didn't have a consolidation of government power. I think if you apply that to artificial intelligence, these are companies that are exercising more power over our society than any companies have ever exercised in the history of the Republic. And so I think the founders would be concerned about, okay, you're doing this, a chat bot, you're putting in information and you're getting an answer. Well, that answer is only good as what the data set that they're using has. human nature is flawed, right? So whoever controls those data sets are going to have an ability to manipulate what we even perceive as reality going forward. And that power, if left unchecked, it will be abused. The founders would tell us it will be abused. So I think it has implications for governance. I mean, it's got a lot of implications for jobs. You know, there are some people that are really accelerationist on AI, and they say that it's like a good thing that it's going to wipe out all these jobs. I don't think most Americans think that's necessarily something we should be subsidizing. I think people have a lot of concerns about that. There's also a lot of concerns about how this interacts with children. And unfortunately, some of these chatbots have done things that are very, very troubling in terms of sexualization with minors, goading them into committing suicide. Why is that happening? Because these are things done by human beings. They are going to not only exemplify the flaws of human nature, but in many respects magnify the flaws. And so what I've proposed is like, listen, we got to be eyes wide open about this. We don't just say, like, let the tech companies do whatever and the states can't do anything. That is not a viable pathway.
And that's where
forward.
there's, I guess, some disagreement, right? Whether this is regulated at the state level or the federal level.
Well, here's the thing, though. Does Congress have the authority to pass a federal statute providing a framework for artificial intelligence? Yes, they do have the authority. Have they exercised that authority? No. Will they exercise that authority? I think almost assuredly they would not be able to agree on what should happen with that. So in the interim, should states be kneecapped from doing it? That's what they were trying to do in the summer of 25. Basically say states couldn't touch AI for 10 years. So what we're doing is, and even the Trump administration has acknowledged the child safety, transparency, that does not stifle innovation. And to the extent it's stifling going after kids, that's something that we want to stifle. But I do think it's going to be, from a consumer perspective, is what you're dealing with real? Do you have a real person on the line? Is what you're seeing in a commercial real? So there's all these different issues that I think arise from this. And so what we're proposing is, let's just have a framework where children are protected, parents' rights are respected, consumers have disclosure about what they're dealing with, but that if AI is used to harm you, that you have an ability to have legal recourse. And you're going to see this become more and more. And here's the thing. Those companies, their job is to make money, right? They're publicly traded companies, maximize the value for your shareholders. I got no problem with that. That's how our capitalist system works. But that incentive for them to make money is not the same goal of what's best for America. So I think as policymakers, we have to recognize that, mediate it, and say, okay, let's make sure this technology develops in a way that's going to enhance our experience as human beings, that's going to reinforce our values as Americans, not in ways that are going to displace us or undermine the human experience, or obviously going to be conflicting with our values.